Hi, good evening, everyone. The theme we're exploring this month is the value of connections and the intangible strengths we can gain from connecting to nature, to others, and to a larger, wider community. So connection has always been at the core of GY's mission. And this month we explore the different values and strengths GY has built up over the last 12 years through through connecting with Mother Earth, our grown-up communities, supporters and partners. I have with me this evening Simon and Sherman from the Happiness Initiative to share a bit about interpersonal relations. So tell us a bit about the Happiness Initiative, your mission and your philosophy. What made you want to start the Happiness Initiative?
Okay, I will start first. Okay, I'm Simon and Sherman is over there. We started Happiness Initiative like 3 years back, about 3 years ago, and we wanted to translate the science of happiness and well-being into actions that people can take. So that's one of the core motivation. And why do we want to do it? Because we think that over here, this science around happiness and well-being, right, is not very well known. And it can also help with the prevention of mental health conditions. And we know that these mental health conditions is on the rise. And over the last like maybe 6 to 8 years, right, from 1 to 8 Singaporean having a mental health condition to 1 to 7, 1 in 7. So we thought that, you know, these signs around happiness and well-being can actually help with the prevention of it. Plus, it can also help us understand what contribute to a more fulfilling life. Yeah.
There are also a lot of times, I think there's a lot of research that goes into the science behind happiness and well-being. Yeah, and that's what we try to do. We try to unearth this research and try to translate it into things that people can take action on. Yeah.
Okay. So actually from a layman's perspective, right, the word happiness can sound very fluffy. So I would say maybe from young, maybe from the age of 2, my parents will ask me, are you happy? Are you happy, right? It's a very fluffy concept. Intangible, personal, it doesn't seem like there's a very broad like understanding or philosophy around what it is. However, actually, like as you guys say, there's actually the science behind the research and the literature. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Maybe I start first, then let Sherman add. Like happiness, broadly, right? You can understand from 2 perspectives. One perspective is affective perspective, which is the emotional perspective, which is when you ask a child, right? Are you happy or not? Is you know, you're basically asking them about their emotions. You know, they're happy, they're not happy, and most of the time, people would think that happiness is just this emotional perspective, but there's also another perspective to happiness, which is the cognitive perspective. Questions like how satisfied are you with your life? Or like, you know, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being your worst possible life and 10 being your best possible life, where do you stand now? So these are asking you about your, you know, your life satisfaction and life evaluation. But when we ask these questions, right, and when you have when you put a rating to it, it kind of unpack how happy you are. So, you know, this is another perspective of happiness. And most of the time when we talk about happiness and the research around happiness, we are usually talking about this perspective of happiness, life satisfaction and life evaluation, because they are more stable. Your emotions, right, will fluctuate from moments to moment, events to events. Yeah. So broadly, these are, but most laymen would only know the emotional part of happiness. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Simon said it a lot. There's a lot of research that goes behind a lot of the themes that when you talk about happiness, that it's quite fascinating when you know about it. Yeah. So for example, when you talk about themes like relationships, we talk about themes like resilience. A lot of times we know it in a very general sense, but actually a lot of research go into these different ideas, and it's not just theory, it's also a lot of they give a lot of interventions that have been proven to work also. Yeah. So that's the kind of work that we do though.
Yeah, I'll say actually I've seen what Simon is saying, which is like you're not your emotions are like flux. So it's kind of like emotions are like clouds cutting across the sky, but the blue sky is still there, the kind of concept of a very Buddhist metaphysical metaphor. Yeah, so it's interesting to see that science has actually translated into like kind of like the self-help movement lah, maybe. Okay, so maybe my next question is
Maybe I would, maybe I would
Mhm.
add is rather the self-help movement has kind of shift more into the science. I think the self-help movement have always existed for the longest time, I think. But yet the science around happiness and well-being, right, is a lot more prevalent in recent years. Yeah, self-help books have always been around, but there's always that fine distinction between what is self-help and what is, like modern day science around happiness and well-being, right? And I think one fine distinction is around research. Yeah, we are not suggesting the self-help movement doesn't have substance, and I think there are very good strategies and ideas around self-help books, but a number of times they may not be backed by research. So once you have research, right, it kind of lend it a lot more substance to it. Yeah.
Sherman, anything to add?
No, I don't have an idea. Yeah.
So my next question is about how have you seen the science in your sessions or outreach to the community in Singapore? Do you have like a few stories where you saw this science like being like you saw that the science was relevant to bring up in a conversation?
I will, yeah, I kind of start first, or whoever next time like can think of it, we can always jump in first, yeah. In the most recent session, we did one with NTU, Career Services, I think, and we were doing something around resilience, around how to manage negative emotions, and so we started off with giving a case study, right? And then everyone jump in, and give their comment. And when they jump in and give their comments, they also share that they could relate and resonate with that case study. They themselves could also feel like, there are times that they are, they also exhibit such a negative emotions. And what was um, uh, um, very interesting is there were a number of anonymous comments, right, saying that how they struggled with a lot of these negative emotions. They may not have someone to turn to. They may not think that it is okay to talk about it. So that was a one very touching moment that at least when we talk about this so through the sessions, right, we got people talking about it, which otherwise they would not have opened up. And then we also saw a lot of follow-up comments about people being more open now to seek help. And yeah, so this is something quite heartening that we never know where our sessions and our message and where the influence would go to and which life it can touch. But we are always very heartening when the feedback can come back to us, and there are people who resonated with the story, the ideas, the science, and they are now more open to talk about it.
How about you, Sherman? Yeah.
No, I think I think having that science there, helping people understand the science is also important because it helps to validate that they are not like weird or wrong for feeling the way they feel. And I think that is nice also when research shows that how they feel is not uncommon, and it also shows very concrete steps of how you can overcome some of these things. So because I think sometimes, like when, for example, in situations like, for example, in school, your teacher always tell you, oh, be resilient, don't give up, right? And then it's like a mantra. They just tell you don't give up and don't give up, but then no one really tells you, oh, what does exactly does it entail when you talk about things like resilience? What are you supposed to do? Yeah, and I think that's why in a lot of our programs that we run, I think a lot of people ask this question like, so what am I supposed to do to overcome this hurdle or this problem that I have? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Actually, that leads very nicely to our part 2, which is like actually the importance of connection with others is why there's GUI as a platform. So actually, GUI is very important because we're 95% run on our volunteers in our community. We actually owe a lot of our success to the strong bonds between volunteers. And actually many people have shared that they feel great solidarity or affinity with each other, and they often return because of the people. Yeah, so actually could you speak a bit about the science of happiness via the act of volunteering?
I think volunteering is also a thing that has been studied quite a fair bit in research and in positive psychology. So it is, I think it's very consistent through many different studies that volunteering does help improve your psychological well-being. Right? Of course, there's a lot more gray area when it comes to how much you need to volunteer or what type of volunteering activities benefits you better. But generally, the science do show that volunteering does give you a better, and does improve your well-being. And I think one of the reasons why we feel that way is that in our research also we realized there's this one common theme that ties a lot of research together, is that when you talk about happiness, a lot of times happiness comes when you shift the focus away from yourself and into others, right? And so volunteering is a very embodiment of that, about going away from yourself and focusing on contributing, giving back to others, whether it's an individual, whether it's a society or a group. And I think that's why it's also very important for volunteering. Simon, you want to add?
No, and I think one of the things that we actually were talking about earlier is in a meta-analysis of volunteering, and when they look at all the research around volunteering, right, and it does suggest that volunteering does have positive effects on depression, on life satisfaction, on well-being, and also can lower the risk of mortality. So that is what current research suggests, but the caveat is like there could be different type of volunteering, and that itself, I think we still need to find out more. But generally it has very positive effects.
That's really interesting, and I would like to draw this now towards the scene that we're in now, which is COVID, right? I mean, recently I was asked how would GUI transition our volunteering programs in this new light of COVID, and I honestly didn't have a good answer. We'll have to find a way to translate this kampong spirit. Previously it's so easy. You just gather everyone, 90 people in the gathering space, then you just, hi everyone. Now, it's so hard. So how has the concept of connection with others shift with the new normal of COVID-19?
That's a tough question. I think when you talk about, if you're talking about connection, right, I think connection doesn't necessarily has to come in the form of a physical interaction. I think even through messages, through Zoom, through social media platforms, you also can find the kind of connection. And I think one of the important things, I guess, during this COVID-19 period, where we don't have that kind of physical interaction where, you bump into a colleague at work or you walk around and then you meet people that you know, it is really that it's important to still always just check in with each other a lot. I don't have a good answer for, I don't know, I can't think of a very good response. Simon, maybe you could answer better this question.
I feel that there's always a different degree of social distancing, right? I mean, in the strict extreme, right, is when people is under quarantine, you totally cannot meet anyone, correct? Yeah. So that is one extreme. But of course, now we are somewhat also have social distancing, but then we can meet up to 5 people, right? So I feel like it really depends on, which, and it is on a continuum of social distancing. So on one extreme, totally isolated, and on the other, and of course, you can move along the continuum whereby you could still meet people, but of course with precautions and or you could meet a smaller number of people. And I think along that continuum, right, we can still find different ways of trying to connect with people. Like if we are really being isolated, then of course the only way that we can connect, and we still need to connect with people, right, is through through all our gadgets, right, phone, laptop, computers. But if now we can at least connect with another, like in groups of 5, right, but with precaution, we can still manage that connection. So I think it really depends on, I will not have one strict recommendation, but it really depends on the prevailing recommendation now. If the prevailing recommendation is that we could still make, connect with people, but with precautions, then we have to make the best out of it. Yeah.
It's a new normal. I have to adapt. So
Yeah.
I'd like to jump back to how your organization is doing now. How would your regular engagement session look like for the Happiness Initiative now? What are the new practices or approaches that you will take?
Oh, so I think our organization changed quite a fair bit through this COVID period. I think so basically, a Happiness Initiative, we typically have been very much a bit like an events company where we run a lot of public engagement events, and also we do a lot of engagements with schools and corporates, right? So I think definitely we were affected very badly by COVID, because basically once COVID happened, all our events and all our engagement had to be cancelled or postponed, right? And but I think it also gave us a lot of time, mind space to think also, and really plan and think about what we're actually trying to achieve in Happiness Initiative. I think sometimes when you run an organization for some time, right, it's very easy to get into the whole operational things of it, where you're just doing and doing and doing, right? And then sometimes you really just need to take a step back and relook at what you're doing and say, hey, am I doing still something that makes sense to the mission of the organization? Yeah, and I think the circuit breaker gave us a very good time to do that. So and we also changed quite a fair bit, because the way we run our workshops, the themes that we focus on has also changed quite drastically. But if you talk about COVID specifically, how it impacted us is really that a lot of our events are now online. So now all our public engagement events is going online. We were supposed to organize a physical conference, a happiness conference in March. That one we shifted it, and then we push it back all the way to end of the year. But again, that will still be a fully virtual event. Yeah.
Simon, anything to add?
No, just a summary of 2 eyes that this COVID has kind of moved us. It gave us time to introspect, and give us time to innovate. So introspection and innovation. Yeah.
That's very meaningful. Yeah. So not a focus on the self, but like, think of how to do better through it. Yeah, that's very interesting. So actually, yeah, I hear from Sherman, actually this COVID allowed the Happiness Initiative to really boil down to the basics, right? Like to go back to what was the initial mission. I was wondering if you could share any final words or any call to actions for our viewers out there. Maybe you could share, how do you think we can establish genuine connection with others?
Simon, you want to go first?
To establish genuine connection with others?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a start with maybe service to others. Yeah, so a lot of times we maybe think of, okay, what can I get, out of this interaction? Like, and maybe it's really because of a very pragmatic society, right? We will talk about cost and benefit, all the analysis, all the ROI. But at the end of the day, I think genuine connection is really about service to others. What can you do for others? And if you start from that angle, right, in any of a connection that you have, okay, what is it that I can, be of service to you for? And I think with that in mind, you can start very, very genuine connection. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that what's important during this period, I think because a lot of people are actually going through very tough times, I think it's very important to continue to just check in on people around you, because I think one very scary thing about this COVID situation is that it's very easy for people to get very isolated. Yeah, because you don't go to work, and then if your friends don't check in with you, you cannot hang out, your families can't visit you. So it's very easy for someone to just become very isolated. And I think that's where all of us should take a proactive step in, like reaching out to friends once in a while, asking how everything is okay or not, just to make sure that they're doing well.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So must always, I mean, you just have to overcompensate for the fact that there's no physical meeting anymore.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I just want to give a shout out to the Happiness Initiative's Instagram. It's at happinessinitiative.sg, so you can keep connected with Simon and Sherman, and hopefully I can attend your conference when it does happen in December. I think fingers crossed, phase 3 will be okay. We just all gotta be safe. Okay, so thank you for chatting with us today, and yeah, have a good evening.
And thank you so much, Ground Initiative. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.